Does meditation work, or is it just daydreaming? This morning's lesson is drawn from a good-hearted question found on Reddit, which begins, is it okay to do walking meditation and please excuse my slur. Is it okay to do walking meditation and wall gazing as a beginner? The question continues. I am new to meditation. And whoopsie, I'm having a technical snafu. Please bear with me. Un, deux, trois. Page layouts. One. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's try this again. I am new to meditation. I have found that taking a walk outside without a phone for an hour has done wonders for me. Also, staring at a wall for 30 minutes to an hour has helped me, although it was difficult. Are these correct methods to meditate? I've read some threads. I have read some threads on here that suggest that these are just nothing more than daydreaming. So let's see here. My friend, you have asked some amazing questions. I applaud your enthusiasm. Full points. So here's what I would like to do. I would like to give you some tips. Not to crush your spirit under the heel of my boot. Not so that I might act like a school of piranha and you an unwitting capybara who has stepped into the wrong tributary. Au contraire, I want to reward your enthusiasm by giving you the subtle tips necessary to take what you're doing and take it up more than a notch. Take it up like 10 notches, if that's okay with you. What is the difference between practicing effective meditation and practicing merely an analog of meditation? Well, what do I mean by analog? Well, I'm a big old vegan, which means I annoy the hell out of everybody. And as a vegan, I love me some tomatoes. And I've gone to some higher-end grocery stores and seen some beautiful-looking tomatoes, spherical and firm and with the vine still attached, and then you get them home and you take them out of the plastic and they don't smell right, and you slice it and it's mealy and tasteless and wretched, and it was merely an analog. It kind of looked like the idealization of a tomato, but it wasn't a tomato in the way that matters. But I've also been to farmers markets, and I've seen some tomatoes that looked ghastly. They were too red, or they were too yellow, or they were not perfectly spheroid. And they had itsy-bitsy teeny imperfections. But then I smelled them, and I tasted them, and the top of my head, to quote Jerry Seinfeld, the top of my head blew off. Metaphorically speaking. I assure you, these were not explosive tomatoes. So there is a profound difference between an analog, a stylization, and the real McCoy. So what is the difference between sitting with perfect posture, staring at a wall, and daydreaming, versus sitting with a posture, facing a wall, and practicing the Buddha's mindfulness and meditation? In a word, neuroscience. Now, what I intend to do is to demystify mindfulness and meditation by gazing at it through the lens of neuroscience. But before we do that, we must go through a caveat. So here it comes. Sturgeon's law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks, but not in the fun, tingly way. Thus, 90% of everything and 90% of everyone, including meditation teachers, are going to stomp and snort as if being rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel were A-okay. They may take you many places, but they won't take you to peace and joy and love and fulfillment. I reckon that's where you want to be. But there's always going to be a minority who are different. There's always going to be a minority who treasure being flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. And we're going to see how this plays out now with neuroscience. Once I jump ahead a few pages. So this is an artist's simplification of the side view of a human brain. This is the top and this is the front. Now, the majority of teachers will implore us to actively concentrate and actively analyze. When we do that, now I know that's not what you're doing, but I got to give you some context. When we do that, when we actively analyze and actively concentrate, the only way to do that is to make use of very discrete mechanisms such as those found in our medial prefrontal cortex or our, I have trouble with that, it's like a tongue twister for me, or our dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Now, there's nothing wrong with our prefrontal cortex. It's pretty awesome. It's like nature's Swiss Army knife. It helps us do so many things. Compare, contrast, sort, calculate, reason. It's fabulous. Edit, for God's sakes. But it can be overworked. The more we overwork it, the more our amygdala is going to be stimulated. This thing that kind of looks like a big old lumpy thing, maybe like a pea or an almond right here. This amygdala is the seat of our aggression and our anxiety. And so here's the great irony. The more we overwork our prefrontal cortex, the crankier and more anxious we will become. And can you see how this feedback loop reminds us of being rigid and fearful and controlling and superstitious? So the psychological, in my experience, is nothing but a manifestation of the physiological. Someone can be as happy as a lark. You stimulate their amygdala, they're going to go transform into Hulk smash, or they're going to tremble like Barney Fife, like Deputy Barney Fife on the Andy Griffith Show. Or like Bobcat Goldthwait on Scrooged. I should say in Scrooged. Marvelous movie. I think, but wait, what happens if we further ignore our body's red flags and keep pushing it, because of bro science, and just keep pushing it, what's going to happen? We could begin presenting with symptoms of depression. So I've settled that to say this. Mindfulness is not concentration. Meditation is not analysis. That's super important. I don't know about you. I'm a big fat geek. And I was raised in the dark days before 1977. There were reruns of Star Trek, the original series. And that was it. Reruns of Star Trek, the original series. Reruns of Doctor Who with Tom Baker. That was it. Maybe some old black and white movies on a Saturday afternoon. It was a sci-fi desert, I tell you. So, sit around, children, and I'll tell you the days before 1977. But anyway, good old Scotty used to insist, "Aye, laddie, the right tool for the right job." And yes, in my world, he sounded a trifle like a pirate. I apologize for that. But similarly, if we want to meditate as transformatively and as powerfully as we'd like to, we must use the right neurological tool for the right neurological job. And I've said all this just to introduce you. I've said all that just to introduce you to this. Let us start with mindfulness. Every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, whether we feel it or not, whether we intend to or not, due to the wiring given to us by evolution and natural selection, every time we inhale, we access our sympathetic nervous system. And make sure everything's copacetic on the screen. Cool. Our sympathetic nervous system, found in the middle third of our spinal cord. This bad boy has evolved to help us to perceive vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. And already, can you see how that is more? Let me just switch to a different visual aid. Can you see how that is less rigid and more flexible? How this switching physiological channels gives us a whole new psychological menu. Pretty cool, huh? Now, into each life, some rain must fall. Now, there's a dark side to perceiving, because in addition to perceiving sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like is kind of a misleading term. I think there's over 22 senses, last checked, but I'm saying and the like because it's more convenient and I don't want my tongue falling off. But in addition to all that, we can also perceive, and we do perceive, emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. All manner. Some external, some internal, some physical, some mental, some pleasurable, some painful, some interesting, some boring, some glorious, and some grotesque. But here's the good news. When it comes to meditation, every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we are accessing our parasympathetic nervous system ensconced within both the lower third as well as the upper third of that same spinal cord, which is really, really cool. What has it evolved to do? It has evolved to support both physical relaxation as well as mental release. Now that might not sound impressive, but it is the key to coping with the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, with whatever life can throw at us. Evolution is not cruel, it is not capricious, it is pragmatic. What's it called? Natural selection. Evolution selects for whatever helps us to live long enough to reproduce. That's it. So us not having a complete nervous breakdown every 15 minutes is really useful for us living long enough to reproduce. So this mechanism works. Now you might say, well, dude, if I have a sympathetic nervous system and I have a parasympathetic nervous system, why do I still feel a need to meditate? That's an excellent question. And the answer comes down to one word. Urkel. Our hoarder's storage space of a brain is so jam-packed. Man, it's got elbows and eye sockets and everything's and people are stepping on each other's foots, and it is like a Black Friday sale of neurons. It's a wonder anything gets done ever. Consequently, accidentally, due to several quirks in evolution, it feels often like our brain is in opposition to our autonomic nervous system. Both the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems are two facets of the same system. We call that the autonomic system. So it feels like either they're in opposition or they're just ignoring each other. There's an easy fix. When you find it so easy, it's going to blow your mind. In fact, hundreds of years ago, the founder of Dzogchen, Prahe Vajra, quipped, and I'm going to paraphrase, it's so easy that people have trouble applying it. It's so easy that some people find it difficult. Here it is. When we silently, mentally, and passively recite the demonstrative pronoun this during our inhalation, our brain automatically begins cooperating with our sympathetic nervous system. When we silently, mentally, and passively recite the one-syllable verb ease during our exhalation, this exact same brain begins cooperating with our parasympathetic nervous system. That's it. So sit upright if you wish. Gaze into nature or your eyelids or a wall or whatever strikes your fancy. As you breathe in, silently, mentally, passively, as you gaze in, silently, mentally, and passively recite this. As you exhale, silently, mentally, and passively recite ease. And you will notice a difference. Instead of staring at the wall, instead of sitting before a wall being a torture test or an act of endurance, all of a sudden it's an opportunity. And your body and brain become like a theater. And we become not the producer, not the director, not the playwright, nor the thespian, but the bloke what sits in the audience, sucking on a hard candy, watching the antics on stage. And we don't got to do nothing. We notice as we breathe in, we relax to a certain degree as we breathe out, and our body automatically starts processing the present, the past, our anticipation of a potential future, and all that lies between. How do we apply that to walking meditation? Simple. There is a minority of teachers who recommend brisk walking meditation, swinging those arms, getting those legs going back and forth. They find that it massages the hippocampus, helps us really deal with processing trauma. I recommend moving from a one-syllable paradigm to the three-syllable paradigm of perceiving. So during the inhalation, perceiving. During the exhalation, releasing. No, Virginia, these are not affirmations. Why? Why aren't they affirmations? Because of definitions. What is an affirmation? An affirmation is an earnest and optimistic lie you tell yourself, hoping to shift reality. These are not that. These are simply descriptions of the mechanisms already in play. And by labeling them simply and easily and ubiquitously and consistently, various discrete facets of our central nervous system begin to resurrect their connection. We were born connected. Through various reasons, we became disconnected. We can be reconnected again. Now here's something wild. A lot of those people that we talked about, a lot of those teachers who were rigid and fearful and controlling and superstitious and elitist and cryptic and competitive and cruel, these knuckleheads, these people say, oh man, it's going to take you several lifetimes. It might take you the length of the birth and death of several universes So be patient. You know what those guys are really saying? My shit doesn't work. Don't hold me accountable. Well, fuck that shit. Because in the penultimate passage of the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha taught that it's possible to master his path in less than 7 years, or 7 quarters, or 7 months, or 7 fortnights, or 7 weeks, or even 7 days. Practice effectively for as little as 5 minutes every 12 hours. And you will feel yourself evolve. What if enlightenment was not that all of a sudden you were a Barbie girl in a Barbie world? What if it was simply meant that you had gotten so good at practicing the Eightfold Path that you had mastered it to the point of practicing it spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively? What if the two things that drove the Eightfold Path were simply mindfulness and meditation? Before we discussed how overusing our prefrontal cortex can stimulate our amygdala, make us both cranky and cowardly at the same time. Oh, what a joy that is, he said sarcastically. But did you know that by reconciling our prefrontal cortex, panting and tired and exhausted, with our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, not only do we calm our amygdala, but we stimulate this thing right here. This thing that kind of looks like a catcher's mitt. This thing that the big kids call the anterior cingulate gyrus. This thing that functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy and compassion and love. "50% of the Buddha's Eightfold Path pertains to loving kindness." The loving kindness that into which walks our intention, our mind's intention, our interpersonal communication, our physical contact, and our circumstantial commerce. Each facet of life that the Buddha described as the 4 bases of mindfulness have a place within loving kindness. And they, according to the late Tulku Thondup and Dilgo Khyentse, the highest love is spontaneous and uncontrived. Now, it's great to have a heart as big as the day is long, but how are we supposed to know what to do or what to say, how to do it, and when to do it? The answer is going to blow your mind. The more we effectively train in mindfulness and meditation, the more our choices and utterances and deeds will flow with the effortless effort of love's centered spontaneity. Please excuse my Tarantino chin. So, the 6th fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path is not just effort. It's the effortless effort of joy's centered spontaneity. The 4th and 3rd enlightenment factors united. Pretty cool, huh? All that's left is impermanence. And you know what? We can't help but notice impermanence. We try not to notice impermanence and fail, because evolution has demanded that if we're going to live long enough to reproduce, we got to know about real or potential peril and its consequences. We got to know that that big, furry, loud thing running up to us isn't going to lick us on the face and demand belly rubs. It's going to eat our face. We are wired to understand impermanence, whether we want to or not. Sitting in meditation, we cannot help but notice that things are changing all the time. That which we see and hear and feel and taste and smell and the like are always changing. Our emotions are always changing. Last night's sorrow becomes tomorrow's joy, and vice versa. Our intentions are changing. Our thoughts are changing. Different memories come on the stage and then leave, replaced by other memories, replaced by fantasies. Some good, some bad, always changing. We do not need a PhD to understand impermanence. We just need to notice and release, and impermanence, like the flasher outside the local supermarket, it's going to find us and give us a show whether we want to or not, whether we want to see it or not. Thus, the Buddha taught it is possible to master his path in as little as a week. And so your first week, you can content yourself to sitting 5 minutes every 12 hours. Sitting sustainably in a rational posture. There's no need to emulate the shape of a pretzel. There's no need to stress your knees or your hips, let gravity do the work for you. Sitting in a very sustainable way. Perhaps the second week will feel like sitting for 10 minutes. Do not push yourself. This is not the special forces. This is the lazy path of enlightenment, the debaucherous path of enlightenment. Is it any coincidence we've got pictures of doinking Buddhas about? By the third week, we might find ourselves sitting for 15 minutes. By the fourth week, we might find ourselves sitting for 20 minutes. By the conclusion of the 12th week, sitting for 60 minutes could be at child's play. By progressing gently over the period of 3 or 4 months, not only are we giving our body a chance to acclimate and our mind a chance to acclimate, but the people populating our life, pets, partners, children, co-workers, need not think that we're going to be culty and come to work bald with a ponytail chanting in a foreign language. They just notice that subtly we're getting our shit together, we're more resilient, we're more peaceful, we're more loving. And it's as simple as that. It is as simple as that. I would love to practice with you, but I'm having some scheduling challenges this morning. This has been Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I've spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the practices of each school of meditation so that you won't have to. Welcome, my friends, to meditate like a Jedi. Within 5.5 hours, I would love to return to lead today's afternoon group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.